What links a starship helmsman to a human rights leader? Here's the twist. George Takei's power didn't start on the bridge of the Enterprise. It began with a painful childhood memory, and today, with more than 10 million people watching his posts, that memory fuels a movement. I'm Sarah Reed, and on Golden American Legends, I bring history to life through the people who lived it. Imagine being torn from your home at 4 years old. In February 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. About 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry, most of them U.S. citizens, were forced into camps. Takei was one of those kids. Years later, he said that experience gave him a sense of grit and determination and inspired his lifelong activism. As a historian, I dove back into his interviews and archives this week, and it still knocks the wind out of me. Think about it. The boy who lost his freedom would one day teach millions about it. Did you learn about Japanese American internment in school? That gap in knowledge is part of why George speaks out. His journey proves that memory is a tool and a shield. To understand how an actor became an advocate, we have to go back to where it all began. So humiliating, so humiliating. That's what George Takei remembers his mother whispering as soldiers took their family away. He was 4 when they were removed from Los Angeles in 1942, sent first to Rower, Arkansas, and later to Tule Lake in California. He recalls the stench of horse stalls where they slept at the assembly center, the smell of manure thick in the air. Guard towers, barbed wire, communal showers, and long lines for meals became normal to him. Normal. As a historian, that word chills me. He was a U.S. citizen, yet treated like an enemy. His parents had minutes to pack. They lost their home. They lost their dignity. George later said he was 5 when he really understood camp life. The barracks, the dust, the heat. He remembered his mother's voice more than anything else. I spent the morning combing through oral histories and a recent interview he did about his children's book, and those details are so vivid you can almost smell the wood and dust. This wasn't just a move, it was a prison with a polite name. But even in this harsh world, something else took root, habits and values that would harden into steel. And that resilience came from right inside his family. Who teaches you to trust a country that betrayed you? For young George, the answer was his parents. In the camps, his mother planted flowers outside their drab barracks. His father organized baseball games and dances. They practiced Gaman, a Japanese idea that means enduring hardship with dignity. Their message was simple: beauty and joy are not luxuries, they're tools for survival. As a teen, George grilled his dad about the injustice. His father didn't sugarcoat it. He said men are fallible, even founders who spoke of liberty yet kept slaves. The lesson was sharp and unforgettable. Our democracy is vitally dependent on people who actively work to keep the system alive. I can hear that in George's voice decades later whenever he warns about silence. The camps ended, but the training didn't. The family rebuilt, step by hard step. George found theater, studied at UCLA, and even volunteered for Adlai Stevenson in the 1950s, his first taste of civic work. The idea was set. America isn't perfect, but we are responsible for pushing it closer to its ideals. Those lessons would follow him to a fantastical place, a set built like a starship bridge, where the future looked different and better. Cut to 1966. Banked studio lights, colorful uniforms, and a vision of tomorrow. George Takei, at 29, steps onto the bridge of the Enterprise as Hikaru Sulu. Star Trek wasn't just a sci-fi show. It was a bet on a more inclusive America. A multinational crew, people of different races working side by side. Even TV's famous first interracial kiss happened in that universe. George put it perfectly. The show represented progress in America on many fronts. For a kid who grew up behind barbed wire, imagine what that meant, playing a future where prejudice wasn't running the ship. As Star Trek turned into a cult phenomenon, George discovered something new. He could talk about more than warp speed. He could talk about what happened to his family and why it mattered. He started presenting Trek films and using fan events to weave in lessons about civil rights and democracy. He later said he finally felt like he was doing what he was put on this earth to do. But while the show's future was open and bright, another battle was still quiet and personal, right under the lights, waiting for its moment to step forward. Imagine building a public life and hiding who you love for almost 20 years. That was George Takei's reality. He grew up in a time when, as he said, people called homosexuality an abomination. Hollywood was no kinder. Careers could vanish over a whisper. So George stayed quiet, even as Star Trek made him a symbol of progress. Behind the scenes, he had a partner, Brad Altman, and a private life built on care and caution. Then came the turning point. In 2005, at age 68, George came out publicly and said he had been with Brad for nearly 2 decades. 3 years later, they were the first same-sex couple to apply for a marriage license in West Hollywood. In 2009, they married at the Japanese-American National Museum. Cameras rolled. Hearts changed. That wedding mattered. It showed love as ordinary and noble, not scandalous. George even weighed in on canon when a later film made Sulu gay. He called it really unfortunate, not out of shame, but to protect the original character's history. After a lifetime of quiet, his honesty unlocked a new chapter. With truth on the table, he was ready to fight in the open. Once out, George didn't whisper, he roared. He spoke against California's Prop 8, he championed marriage equality, and he showed up for panels and pride stages with the same calm gravity he brought to the enterprise. His message is blunt and grave. We all have a responsibility as good American citizens to speak out. To not speak out is cowardice. That line hits me every time. He mentors younger LGBTQ people, reminds them they're not alone, and keeps telling the wider public that civil rights are for everyone. In 2016, the Supreme Court affirmed marriage equality nationwide, and George celebrated the moment as both deeply personal and undeniably American. In 2023, Plague honored him with the Betty DeGeneres Advocate Award for helping LGBTQ youth. And because we're halfway through, here's my only quick plug. If you love deep dives into culture that changed the country, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Likes and shares help more people find these stories too. George's coming out didn't just free him, it gave him a louder microphone. And when national politics took a hard turn, he used that voice to connect painful history to urgent headlines. How do you turn pain into a show tune? George Takei did it with Allegiance, the Broadway musical he helped create from his family's internment story. He once framed it as a tribute to his father, almost an apology for the silence they all had to carry. The show opened on Broadway in 2015. The initial run was short, but the reach exploded. In December 2016, a filmed performance hit more than 600 theaters across the US and Canada and grossed over $1 million in a single Fathom Events Day. An encore followed in February 2018, timed to the 75th anniversary of Executive Order 9066. That's art doing serious public work. George ties it back to Gaman. Our family moved to Skid Row in Los Angeles, but we, through the spirit of Gaman, kept going. He didn't stop at the stage. He wrote the graphic memoir They Called Us Enemy in 2019. And in 2024, he released My Lost Freedom, a picture book crafted with careful archival research and trips to Little Tokyo to get details right. This is storytelling as civic duty. And the story didn't just live in theaters and classrooms. It leaped onto millions of screens every single day. Can a cat meme change a mind? George Takei seems to think so, and honestly, I do too. He's a social media giant with more than 10 million followers on Facebook and millions more across Twitter and Instagram. Forbes even once called him the prom queen of Facebook. He blends goofy memes, think heart-shaped cat photos, with sharp political commentary. It's not random, it's strategy. As he likes to say, to be positive is to start to succeed. Joy opens the door, truth walks through it. I read a fascinating profile about how a small team helps him manage the page, but the tone is his and the mission is clear. He'll post a Star Trek gif that makes you smile, then follow with a thread about civil rights or education policy. During debates over so-called Don't Say Gay laws, he joked about calling it a Takei parade, using humor to sidestep hate and keep people thinking. Screenshots of his posts rack up likes in minutes, and when real crises hit, that playfulness turns into purpose. The next chapter shows how he turned that digital megaphone into a siren. When George heard talk of a Muslim registry in 2017, he heard an echo from 1942. He went public fast, linking the policy to the first steps of internment. In his words, they found out where we lived, what we did. Then they came down with a curfew. After that, soldiers came for us. That's not theory, that's his life. He spoke with Muslim American communities to say this is how it starts. He blasted the idea on TV and online, answering officials who cited Japanese American imprisonment as a precedent. He didn't just tweet, he organized. More than 310,000 people signed a petition he pushed in solidarity with U.S. Muslims. I remember watching that number climb by the hour, history class meeting real time. He kept drawing lines between past and present, including the family separations at the border years later. His point stayed steady. We remember so it won't happen again. That's the guardrail of democracy. And out of that heat, he shared the heart of his philosophy, the thing that keeps him grounded while he keeps fighting. Here's his secret: fight hard, laugh often. George learned it from his parents planting flowers by a barracks door. He says the way to survive isn't to wallow in the misery, it's to find joy in life. You work for justice and find joy at the same time. I love that. It's not about pretending things are fine, it's about refusing to let hate define your spirit while you push for change. Watch his feeds: a pun, a meme, then a precise call-out of a bad policy. That mix works because it feels human. And in his own life, he keeps balance. He practices Kyudo, the Japanese art of archery, he meditates, he sings with community groups, he laughs at fan conventions, then speaks in hushed tones at museum events. As a historian who has sat through a lot of heavy testimony, I can tell you, this blend of joy and duty helps the hard truth land. George is in his later 80s now, but his energy still hums. That smile isn't a mask, it's a strategy, and it leads to a powerful question: what changed and what still needs us? So what actually changed? Plenty. In 1988, the United States passed the Civil Liberties Act, an official apology for the internment and a $20,000 payment to each surviving person. It mattered legally and morally. George often points to it as proof that truth can reshape policy. Decades later, Obergefell Hodges in 2015 made same-sex marriage the law nationwide. For George and Brad, that wasn't abstract. It was their love recognized by their country. When family separations dominated the news in 2018, George reminded people that even in internment, we remained a family. It was a painful comparison and a necessary one. Today, he serves on the board of the Japanese American National Museum, helping shape exhibits so young visitors don't forget. He writes books for kids and teens so the lesson sticks. Rights can be lost and won by ordinary people. I spent days matching his milestones to these legal shifts, and you can feel a pattern. Change happens when memory meets action. But the arc of the moral universe doesn't bend by itself. Someone has to lean on it, and that brings us to the legacy we carry. Want to know the real power of a story? It turns a child in a horse stall into a voice millions trust. George Takei's life runs from barbed wire to a starship to town halls, and the through line is clear: speak up and keep your heart open. He says to not speak out is cowardice. He also says, find joy in life and work for justice at the same time. That's a roadmap we can all use. I'm Sarah Reed, and here at Golden American Legends, I believe these legacies are living tools. If this journey moved you, please subscribe for more crafted deep dives and share this with someone who loves Star Trek or cares about civil rights. Thanks for watching. What's one injustice you think needs our voices today? I'm listening, and so is this community. Take George's lesson with you. Laugh when you can, stand up when you must, and never forget that your story can change someone else's world. The bridge is yours now. Take the helm.